Arg, mateys, and welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your week off and a beautiful spring break, I hear is what it's called. But let's get back down to business. It's me, Captain Pegleg Skullfist, and we are going to continue on our story of Treasure Island. We have 2 more chapters, and then we have 2 other chapters of fun for the rest of the week. So, we are on Chapter 8, My Life Hangs in the Balance. If we recall from our last chapter, our storyteller, our narrator, Jim Hawkins, is stuck with Long John Silver because he goes back to the little house and finds that the pirates are there. So he's trying to decide if he wants to work with Silver or if he wants to escape and get back to the pirates. So this is Chapter 8, My Life Hangs in the Balance. After I taunted the pirates, Silver's men were itching to punish me. One stepped toward me, but Silver stopped him. "Stop there," he cried. "You're not the captain here. I'll teach you. Cross me and you'll go where many a man's gone before, to feed the fishes." Silver's man stepped back, but an audible murmur rose from the other men. "No one lays a finger on the boy," Silver growled. After this, there was a long, uneasy silence. I stood straight up against the wall with my heart beating like a sledgehammer. Silver leaned back against the wall with his arms crossed and his pipe in the corner of his mouth, as calm as could be. But he kept one eye on his unruly followers. The other pirates drew together at the far end of the longhouse and began to whisper among themselves. One after another, they would look up, but it was not me they were looking at. It was Silver. Eventually, they went outside, leaving Silver and me alone. "Now look here, Hawkins," Silver said in a whisper that was barely audible. "You're with half a plank to death. They're going to try to throw me off, but I'll stand by you through thick and thin. I didn't mean to. No, not till you spoke. But now I see what sort of man you are. You stand by me, and I'll stand by you. I'll save your life if I can, but if I do, it's tit for tat, Jim. You gotta help me out if I get into a sticky spot with the squire and your people. You've got to do what you can to save John Silver." I was bewildered. It seemed a hopeless thing he was asking. After all, he had been the ringleader from the beginning. I told him I would do what I could if it should come to that. "Then it's a bargain," he said, still whispering. "I'm on the squire's side from now on, and you and I will stick together." We sat in silence for a few moments, and then Silver continued. "While we're sitting here, perhaps you can explain something. Why do you suppose the doctor decided to give me Flint's map?" he asked. My face must have expressed complete astonishment. I could not imagine why Dr. Livesley would have given Silver the map, and I wondered if he really had. Silver saw that I was surprised, but he did not press me for an answer. "There's a reason for it, no doubt," he said, shaking his head like a man who expects the worst. Just then, the door opened and one of the mutineers stepped in, or more like it, he was pushed in by the others. He was visibly trembling. "Don't worry, lad," said Silver. "I won't eat you. I know what's happening." The buccaneer pressed a slip of paper to Silver. "The Black Spot," said Silver. "I thought so. They're fixing a mutiny." Silver didn't waste a second. He called the others in. "Let's hear your grievances," he said. "Then I'll give you an answer." A pirate by the name of George Merry laid out the case against Silver. "You've made a mess of this cruise, John," he said. "You let the enemy out of this here trap for nothing. Then you wouldn't let us go after them, and on top of it all, you insist on protecting the boy." "Is that all?" asked Silver quietly. "I'd say that's enough," retorted Mary. "Well, now look here," said Silver. "I'll answer these points one after another. I'll answer 'em. I made a mess of this curse, didn't I? Did I?" Cruise, not curse, cruise. "You all know what my plan was, and if we had stuck to it, we'd be aboard the Hispaniola this night, every man of us alive, and the treasure stowed safely in the hold. Now you have the insolence to stand for captain over me. You sank the lots of us." Silver paused, and I could see by the other men's faces that these words had not been said in vain. "You say this cruise is ruined," said Silver continued. "By gum, you're right about that. We're close to being locked up, and there's one thing that may save us yet, and it's this boy. You scurvy dogs want to kill him? What sort of fool plan is that? Much better to keep him alive. Maybe you didn't know that there's a rescue boat coming to get these gentlemen, but there is. And when that boat arrives, you'll be glad we have a hostage to bargain with." Silver spat on the ground and went on. "And as for why I made a bargain with the squire, well, look here." As he spoke, he pulled the map out of his pocket. "Right here's why I've done it." I looked and saw that it was a map with the 3 red crosses, the one I had found in the captain's sea chest. Dr. Livesley really had given it to Silver, but why? I could not imagine. The other mutineers were stunned too. They leaped on the map like ravenous beasts. It was passed from hand to hand, one tearing it from another, and by the oaths and the cries and the childish laughter with which they accompanied their examination, you would have thought they were fingering the gold itself, already loaded safely on the ship. "Yes," said one, "it's Flint's writing, sure enough." "Then there's hope in it yet," exclaimed another. "Mighty pretty," said George Merry. "But how are we going to get away with the treasure now that the ship's gone?" "How are we supposed to get away?" Silver barked angrily. "You ought to tell me, you and the rest of the lot that lost me my schooner. But no, you can't. You've got the invention of a cockroach. You lost the ship. I found the treasure. Who's the better man? By thunder, I resign. You can elect a new captain if you fancy. I'm done with it." By this point, the men had changed their minds. It was the map that convinced them. "Silver," they cried. "Silver for Captain John Silver forever." "So that's the tune, is it?" said Silver. "Well, George, I reckon you'll have to wait another turn. Here, Jim, here's a curiosity for you." He handed me the paper the men had given him. I saw that one side had been blackened with wood ash, while the other displayed the word "deposed." After this, Silver tied me up and we all went to sleep. Well, all except me, that is. I had trouble sleeping. As I lay in the darkness, I thought of the man I had fought that afternoon in my perilous position. Above all, I thought of the remarkable game that Silver was playing, keeping the mutineers together with one hand while grasping the other after every way possible and impossible to save his miserable life. He himself slept peacefully and snored loudly, yet my heart was sore for him, wicked as he was, to think of the dangers that surrounded him and the shameful fate that surely awaited him. The next morning we prepared to set off to find the treasure. During breakfast, Silver ate with the Captain Flint on his shoulder and reminded the other men how lucky they were to have him as their leader. "Aye, mates," he said, "it's lucky you have a barbecue to think for you with this here head. Sure enough, they'll have a ship. Where they have it, I don't know yet, but once we get the treasure, we'll find out. Then we'll be all set." Thus he ran on with his mouth full of bacon, restoring the mutineers' hope and confidence, and perhaps repairing his own at the same time. "As for the hostage," he continued, "I'll tie a rope around his waist and keep him close to me when we go treasure hunting in a bit. We'll keep him like gold in case we need him later." By the time we set out, all the pirates were armed to the teeth. Silver had 2 guns slung about him, the great cutlass at his waist, and a pistol in each coat pocket. To complete his strange appearance, Captain Flint sat perched upon his shoulder, squawking odds and ends of sea talk. Some of the men carried picks and shovels, while others carried pork, bread, and water for the midday meal. I had a line about my waist and followed after Silver like an obedient puppy. We began to climb a hill, and the men plunged ahead. They were in excellent spirits. Some of them even ran. Silver and I followed. I tethered my rope, and he plowing through rocks and gravel with his wooden leg. We had gone about half a mile when one of the men gave a cry of terror. We ran forward and saw a skeleton on the ground. George Merry bent down to inspect the bones. "He must have been a seaman," he said, "for these scrapes on his bones are bits of quality sea cloth." "Aye," said Silver, "you would find a bishop here, I reckon, but what sort of way is that for bones to lie? It ain't in nature." The dead man lay perfectly straight with both arms raised above his head like a diver. We stood and stared at the skeleton for a minute before Silver broke his silence. "I've taken a notion into my old skull," he said. "I think this poor fellow is a pointer. Get out the compass and take a bearing along the lines of the bones is pointing. It was done, and sure enough, the bones seemed to be pointing to the way to the treasure. "I thought so," cried Silver. This is one of Flint's little jokes. Him and those 6 fellows were here alone. He'd killed 'em, every man, and this one he'd laid down by compass to point the way." After a few minutes we set off again, but the pirates no longer ran. They kept side by side and spoke softly. The terror of the fallen buccaneer had dampened their spirits. When we reached the top of the hill and saw the spyglass before us, Silver took bearings with his compass. "There are 3 tall trees," he said, "and they are in the right line. Should be child's play to find the loot now." And that is where we're going to stop. So Long John Silver is on his way to find the silver, and he thinks he has it. But does he? We will find out tomorrow when we read Chapter 9. Do not forget, after you watch this video, head over to your Google Classroom and you will see your assignment for the day. I hope to see you again tomorrow. I hope you had a great break. And this is Captain Pegleg Skullfist signing off for the night. Ahoy, mateys.